It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome into another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith, and when Brandon Rossi's voice is back, that means Alan Saunders is back. Alan, how are we doing?
I'm doing good, man. A little tired today, but doing good.
You mentioned to me right before, got to give a shout out to Aaron, because a couple people mentioned how well Aaron did on the podcast. I'm not sure why specifically yet. I mean, that's probably been Aaron's fifth time or so on the podcast. So I'm not sure what it was about yesterday specifically, but shout out to Aaron for being ready and available to go when Alan's not around.
Yeah, it's always appreciated. We'll have to get Brandon on too. He's been doing a nice job with our little stand-up videos from practice. So
yeah, this is like this is the reward. You do the stand-up videos, see how they do in that setting, and then hey, maybe step up to the big boys on the afternoon drive.
This is the majors here. This ain't no Altoona. Yeah.
Exactly. A lot of good stuff to get to, some stuff maybe rehashing, getting your thoughts on a couple things that we talked about obviously over the last couple of days. Something that we didn't talk a ton about, just came actually the news coming right after we had recorded yesterday. So while it had happened shortly before the episode came out, Aaron and I had finished up recording. Donald Parham, torn Achilles, very unfortunate news for him, a guy that's been obviously riddled with injuries over the last few seasons specifically, and honestly the duration of his career. And, we've talked about what is exactly the role for him within this team, but if they were viewing him as a second pass-catching tight end, there was certainly a role to be had there. And then you kind of bake in the Adam Schefter tweet about renewed interest potentially in a Jonnu Smith trade not being dead on the Pittsburgh Steelers side of things. This kind of all coincides, right? These two things potentially go together a little bit here.
Yeah, I think it makes sense as to why we heard about the interest from Jonnu Smith, and everyone I know connected to Steelers was like, probably not going to happen. And then all of a sudden, and then Schefter himself reported, yeah, it's probably not going to happen. Then all of a sudden, big change of heart yesterday, and that definitely comes, hours after Donald Parham injured at practice. Look, I don't know how big of a role they had intended for Donald Parham. I think Steelers fans were sort of like unbelievably optimistic about how good he could be. He didn't play at all last year. So probably not looking at a player who's going to be a difference maker. But it definitely, like, if you're looking at pass catching now from the tight end position, and it starts to look like who's the backup to Pat Freiermuth, who, by the way, has had a number of concussions over his football career, in addition to just like the normal wear and tear that anybody has. Certainly a guy you would want to have a good backup for. Who is the back? Who could do Pat Freiermuth's job if he got hurt on this roster right now? Certainly not Darnell Washington. Probably not Connor Hayward. And JJ Galbraith, like there's nobody left. So like I think tight end kind of
Hot Rod up to.
Yeah, well, I mean, hey, I should probably find out. DJ Thomas Jones is playing a little fullback, but maybe he could be some tight end. But like I think a second tight end, the idea of playing two tight ends is to be one of the ideas of playing two tight ends a lot of the time is to try to be balanced. Like the Steelers are not balanced when you're playing Pat Freiermuth on one side and Darnell Washington on the other. Like it's not balanced. Like those guys are not the same. You need two tight ends with roughly similar skill sets to have something approaching balance out of 12 personnel. They don't have anyone like that. Even with Parham, I think maybe it's questionable whether they had someone like that, but at least there was the chance that maybe he could be that. Now there's nobody. So I think the idea of them adding a tight end now, whether or not it's Jonnu Smith, feels like something that probably needs to happen.
Well, I think that last part is my thought. I could certainly see them adding a tight end to that room. It's just what type of investment are you willing to make with it? Like, what's that worth to them to adding another pass catching tight end? Does it need to be as much of an investment as it would be into Jonnu Smith? We don't know what the trade cost would be, the draft capital going the other way. But clearly, if he's looking for a new contract, he looked at the tight end market and try to fit in his production from last year into the tight end market. I mean, I feel like you mentioned 2 years, 20 million. That might be being a bit. I mean, I get the age part of it too, but like maybe being a bit conservative, because if he's willing to take a shorter term contract, maybe he could push for more like 11 or 12 per year based off what tight ends are getting paid.
Yeah. I mean, I just kind of threw that out there as a number, but
Mhm.
hey, in the draft capital thing, like the Steelers did a lot of work to get the draft capital they have so that they could trade up for a quarterback next year. I don't know why they're going to want to trade away from that. But let me just throw this out there. Widely speculated the Dolphins are going to trade Jalen Ramsey. I don't really
Mhm.
understand. I'll be honest. I don't understand any of what the Dolphins are doing this offseason.
Yeah.
I don't get it. But let's say they trade Jalen Ramsey. Their depth chart at cornerback then looks like Storm Duck, Cam Smith, and 5th round pick Jason Marshall. Who by the way, I kind of like that of Florida, but and also Artie Burns. Those are their options at corner if they trade Jalen Ramsey. Let me throw this out there. With the Steelers draft picks being semi-precious, things that they think they want, would you trade Corey Trice for Jonnu Smith?
I think it's something you certainly got to consider. I think there's going to be, it's funny because the answer, much more proven commodity, obviously, in Jonnu Smith. But going back to a topic that a lot of people are talking about right now on social media is fans overrating their own players. I'm sure there are people that are like, no, you can't trade Corey Trice. Like, I love Corey Trice.
I mean, I really like Corey Trice. I think you can trade him for a Pro Bowler.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Like, if they go that route, I guess I hadn't considered, trading player as opposed to draft capital. That's certainly, that's probably more appealing on the Steelers end of things.
I agree. Yeah,
that.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that now I don't have any idea what Miami would want. I do know the Steelers, I don't think would be going into this trade with the intent of trading back a tight end. Like, I don't think that's what I think they would want to add to the tight end room. They don't want to like I saw some people saying like Darnell Washington a draft pick. I don't think that's the idea of this trade from the Steelers' perspective. It would be to add a proven pass catcher to what they already have. I don't think trading away a tight end or wide receiver would be part of it. Corner's interesting.
Yeah.
I'd rather start Corey Trice than Artie Burns. I know that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, obviously the injury history, not a clean bill of health for Corey Trice either. But yeah, I don't know. That would certainly be interesting if that's the path that we go. Also, very interesting day. I mentioned this to you right before we started recording here. Some of the quotes that were coming out today, obviously, Beanie Bishop stirring up some stuff on social media, and then stood 10 toes down, did not back down on his stance, kind of doubled down, saying basically, yeah, I would do the exact same thing again. That's obviously causing a little ruckus on social media, but I wanted to stick within what we're talking about here, this topic, and get your thoughts on what Connor Hayward had to say about a potential Jonnu Smith acquisition. Said how similar Jonnu and Pat are, and I don't know that I necessarily fully agree with that, but also said it's like having George and DK. You can only have one of them, which is super interesting to hear him say publicly. What do you make of everything that Connor Hayward had to say there?
Yeah, I mean, I felt like it was very much a support of Pat Freiermuth, and I don't really think that the idea of trading for Jonnu Smith would be to take away from Pat Freiermuth. I feel like it would be to take away from Roman Wilson and Calvin Austin, of the guys that are on the roster right now, and the necessity to need a big upgrade at wide receiver. Not that Jonnu Smith is going to play wide receiver. It would just be with the idea that, okay, 12 personnel is the base. Like, here's who we got. That's our best 5. It involves 2 tight ends. Let's go from there. I don't think that's crazy to me. And then if you're playing 2 tight ends all the time, like a lot of what it's saying is like, yeah, hey, me and Darnell are good. And like, he's right. I mean, those guys can play. They've produced. But if you're that's like the difference between being the backup cornerback and the backup kicker, right? Like the backup kicker never plays. The backup cornerback plays all the time. or maybe running back would be even a better example. Like if you're playing 2 tight ends, then the second 2 tight ends are going to play an awful lot, and so I don't know. I think this is something the Steelers should be interested in. It's something I know the Steelers are interested in. Will it actually happen? I don't know. And it also, I think, depends on like what they do with receiver. Like if it's signing Gabe Davis to the veteran minimum contract because Jacksonville's paying his salary. Well, boy, all of a sudden, like spending that 10, 12 million on Jonnu Smith doesn't seem so bad, right? You were going to have to pay Keenan Allen or Amari Cooper that. Instead, you can get Gabe Davis and a tight end. I think that sounds pretty all right to me. So, I mean, I don't know that I think this is going to happen, but I definitely think since the Parham injury, this feels like a different discussion.
Had an interesting name thrown my way. Somebody texted me and said, when the Steelers ultimately don't end up making this trade with Miami, he gets a new deal there. Watch them sign Gerald Everett.
Interesting. I don't necessarily have a problem with it. Yeah, I mean,
was in Chicago last year, but like, I mean, he's another like primarily pass catching tight end. He didn't really produce in Chicago last year, but the difference from what their offense looks like it's going to be now, where obviously they invested in Colston Lovell and already have Cole Kmet, they're going to play a lot of 2 tight ends. Ben Johnson coming over from Detroit knows how to use them. I wouldn't have said that last year about the state of that Chicago offense. So I don't know what Gerald Everett has left in the tank. I'll be honest.
It feels very much like just Michael Pruitt all over again.
Potentially. Yeah. Which wouldn't it be funny if that ended up just being a reunion that they made down the road if they don't make a trade for a tight end, something like that. But something else you put in my mind there when you were talking about
free agent too, isn't he?
Did he not retire?
Oh, I don't know. Did he?
I don't know. I thought for some reason I thought that he had. I don't know why I had that in my head that he did.
Okay. Yeah,
but I wanted to ask.
He hasn't been signed. I know that.
I wanted to ask you. Well, I guess kind of expand upon something you said there. So you mentioned the number of eligibles there, and right now, if you were to acquire Jonnu Smith, there's probably one receiver in your top 5 because 2 backs, potentially 2 tight ends, and DK Metcalf. Is that your 5 best eligibles?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, and I'm curious. I mean, again, we're gonna keep pushing the agenda, seeing both running backs on the field at the same time until we see it happen. But this is certainly not something that I'm just closing the door on, the idea of the Jonnu Smith thing, that is. So I don't know. I think it's likelier to happen than before, but I was pretty much at like 0% before. So yeah, I'm likelier now, but it's not something that I'm saying like, yeah, I think that this is now likely to happen. But all right, good stuff. Was there anything else that came out of today's OTAs before we jump into some questions you felt like was interesting?
No, I talked a good bit about Beanie on the practice report. So I mean, I think that's pretty.
Oh, I want to get your thought on one of my thoughts.
All right.
Before we dive into questions, because just mentioned Roman Wilson, and we're now at the point where, as we are every single year, where people latch on to a hype train and say that this is going to be a guy, especially with the state of the Steelers wide receiver room. A leap from him could obviously
we need
change
a different mode of locomotion for hype. Train is so 19th century.
Okay,
we need like a hype Cybertruck. I don't know. That's probably the wrong. A hype rocket, maybe.
Okay.
A hype fighter jet. Something.
Okay.
Why are we still Why are we still pushing trains?
I don't know. It just sounds good, I guess. Like the ones you said right there, they just don't roll off the tongue the way hype train does.
I don't know.
But all right, so people are jumping on the hype jet of Roman Wilson now, and I think a lot of that is due to the state of the wide receiver room. Like all the conversation really is if Roman Wilson takes a leap, if Calvin Austin does the same thing as last year, takes another leap, if Troy Fautanu is the player that we think he can be, if Aaron Rodgers signs and ends up looking like he did in the second. There's just so many ifs within that to me. Those are all things that are like, I wouldn't want to be banking on. You know, like it's nice if they happen, but it's hard to go into a season assuming that they all are going to. Like, if the team's success is going to be predicated on those things happening, you're not leaving yourself much of a room for error.
There's a word that Mike Tomlin uses a lot that I think people like gloss over because he has this like thesaurus way to speak where he like inserts big words into places that maybe you wouldn't expect them.
We need it. What does he think about hype train? I'm curious as to what he would use in that spot.
I don't know. Something like a hype hovercraft, maybe some alliteration there. He uses the word reasonable a lot. And I think like for a lot of people, they just like gloss over it when they hear it. But like, okay, could Broderick Jones, just because he's moving to left tackle, become every bit of the potential that he's already had, or always had, see all that realized, which would basically make him like a Pro Bowl tackle and one of the best tackles in the league? Is that possible? Absolutely. Is it reasonable to expect that that's going to happen? No. Right? Can Mason Rudolph play over the course of an entire season the way he played over the best 3-game stretch of his career? Possible. It's not reasonable. Can Roman Wilson, with one NFL rep under his belt, become a legitimate wide receiver 2 this year? Crazier things have happened. It's not reasonable to expect that. And so it's okay to talk about it. Could Will Howard be the next Tom Brady in terms of 6th-round picks to have success in the NFL? Possibly, but probably not. And it's definitely not reasonable to think that. And so, yeah, I think you get a lot of that this time of year where like, and it's actually really difficult for me because like when I hear people say stuff like Will Howard's going to be the next Big Ben, what I want to say is like, you're on crack. And like, that's never going to happen. But of course there is a chance it could happen.
You got to leave the door open. Yeah.
And it's also like that framing is sort of fundamentally unfair to him. So
sure.
I try really hard to be fair and say like, that's not, and I think that's one of the reasons that Mike Tomlin has sort of circled around that word, is that that's a fair way to put it. It's not reasonable to expect that. Now, there are some things that I think are reasonable. I think it's reasonable to expect Mason McCormick to be a lot better this year. He had a normal regular rookie season, got thrust in there with 2 injuries, played way better than anybody expected him to be as a 4th-round rookie out of an FCS school. Overall, was he great? No. But like, I think it's reasonable to expect him to be better this year. You would look at the natural progression of a 4th-round pick and say, okay, rookie year, don't expect much. But second year, after having started a bunch of games in his first year, yeah, this is a place where this guy could be better. Keanu Benton, 2 years under his belt. Now with Larry Ogunjobi gone, you're going to see a bigger role as a nickel and dime, the primary guy, him next to Cam Hayward. I think it's reasonable to expect a bigger year from Keanu Benton. Though, like, but you've got to have some evidence before you go talking about like things that could happen that we think maybe should happen.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like even of the 2nd-year guys that we're talking about, I mentioned Troy and Roman as like question marks, obviously. And one I feel much more comfortable about within that role that they're going to have than the other. But like, at least if he saw some type of body, like Peyton Wilson, right? Is it fair to expect that the game's going to slow down for him even more in year 2, another year in the system? Sure. Like that one, I would feel more comfortable about somebody making that statement. My only point within like that entire thing was there's just been so many buts and ifs and what could lead to a successful season for the Steelers. When those start to pile up, you're not leaving yourself much margin of error if things do start to go south.
Yeah. And the other way works too. Is it reasonable to expect Aaron Rodgers will be as good as he was last year at 42 years old? Probably not. He'll probably be a little bit worse. Now, he's not coming off an injury, so you'll have that.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, should you think that Aaron Rodgers at his best in 2025 will be as good as Aaron Rodgers at his best in 2024? No, you should not. And probably the same thing about Cam Hayward. So, like, yeah, there's
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of unreasonable opinions out there this time of year.
Tomorrow, I want to bring this one up just because it's so pertinent to the calendar here. But Steve Anderson had a question about why did the Steelers go from 10 to 6 in terms of the number of OTAs?
It's a good question. One that I will fully intend to ask Mike Tomlin directly the next time I talk to him.
So we don't have like an official. We don't have an
an
answer.
official.
Okay.
But here's what I'll say is that these are optional. I think teams try to gauge. They'll talk to the leaders on the team. Who's going to come? You know who's going to show up no matter what, right? Every rookie, every guy on a first-year contract, futures contract, everybody with a position battle, everybody who's not in a place where they want to be on the depth chart, right? All those guys are coming no matter what. So of the starters, basically, who's going to come the full time? They don't care how many, if you have 6, 10, 25, they're there. Who is not going to come at all, no matter how many you have? And then where do the guys in the middle fall? And you try to gauge as a team, okay, well, we're going to have about half our veterans for this many practices, or this guy says he'll do a week. And then you try to decide what's better for your team. Is it better to have 6 practices with 75% of your regulars in attendance for each of them, or 10 practices with 40% of your regulars in attendance for each of them?
Yeah.
And then you got to try to make it work. So
do you think they're actually like asking, like literally asking the guys that question, or do you think it's more so like just them guessing?
Not like every guy, but I think they'll go to people like
Cam Haywards
and that and say, what do you
well,
think
I guess in the case of TJ Watt, might be a little bit different than like last year would have been.
Yeah, what do you think is going to work best? And then we try to figure it out. So yeah, I think that's what's going on.
I want to mention this to you just because I'm scrolling the YouTube comments and I see that one of the questions that we wanted to bring up was somebody bringing up Mexico. We had a YouTube comment that we read on here yesterday where somebody was watching in Thailand.
Awesome.
How sweet is that? Yeah. Like, that's insane. So I started, like, I know I mention this all the time, but literally, like, I don't care what state it is in the US or if it is a completely different country or anything like that. I love knowing where people are watching and listening to the podcast too. Just really just like opens my eyes to not only the fan base of the Steelers, we know that they're like a global fan base, but also just how far spanning this podcast and YouTube and the listening platforms allow us to reach as well. So love knowing where the audience is coming from. But I mentioned this person bringing up Mexico here. So Ray said, "Hey guys, you have no idea how many Steelers fans are around the world. I heard all of my life. The Steelers is just a small market team, and this is the most idiotic thing ever. Just in Mexico, the Steelers have millions of fans, and you guys talk about local fans traveling for games. Sorry, but the Steelers is the team that has the most fans in all of football." Yeah, so there's a difference here between being a small market team, obviously, and being the global brand that the Steelers are. But Alan, you could probably touch on this better.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, they're not the team that has the most fans in the NFL. That's almost certainly the Dallas Cowboys. They might be top 5. Like, it's a really hard thing to measure.
I wonder what Google will tell me on this. Yeah, not that this could be fully accurate, but I'm curious.
So, like, if you go by sort of social media following, I think they are top 5. The Eagles are always up there as well. The Patriots, simply because of how good they were, and the Chiefs have really been rising because of how good they are. The Packers, the other one that's sort of this, but like having fans and market size are 2 very different things.
This was actually just done in March, by the way. Not to cut you off, but I just found the article, and the Steelers were 4th behind the Cowboys, the Eagles, and like you said, the Patriots. Obviously, the 2000 success along with the rise of kind of social media and the NFL hitting its popularity and stuff like that, I'm sure has played into that. But yeah, Steelers 4th on this list.
Yeah. So the thing about having those fans is that when you have your fan base spread out all over the world, it's harder to turn that fan base into money than when they're all in your city. And in fact, when you have a small market, it's actually much, much more difficult to increase your revenue because the Steelers have basically, like, and I talked about this on Morning Rush not too long ago when we talked about international games. Every Steelers fan, every person in, like, it's not like the Steelers can go increase their their depth of fan penetration in their local market. Like, the only way they can do that is for more Steelers fans to be born. Like, there's no like non-Steelers fans out there left in their local market for them to convert. Like, what, like, you know, those people don't exist. It's not like the Raiders who moved to Vegas and now have like this huge, I mean, Vegas isn't that big of a market either, but like they have this huge opportunity to increase their local revenues because they can convert all these people to being Raiders fans. The expansion teams in the 90s, the Panthers, the Jaguars, going to places that did not have teams, they can grow. Cities that grow, like Atlanta, has grown so much since the Falcons have been founded that they're continually adding new people from other cities that they can, you know, add to their fan base. Pittsburgh, as a metro area, is at best flatline in its size. And so, you know, there are definite disadvantages to being a small market that don't have anything to do with how many fans you have, because it is so much like, how are the Steelers profiting off of their millions and millions of fans in Mexico? Like, sure, they can sell them some jerseys online, they can sell them some terrible towels. It's better than not having those fans, but it's very different than having those fans within a 25-minute drive of your stadium.
And I think the other thing that people kind of miscorrelate is the success of the franchises. Like Adam Silver was just on ESPN today talking about the NBA Finals and the two teams that are playing being the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Indiana Pacers. And there's obviously people, you know, saying it's bad because it's two smaller markets and it's not going to be good television and stuff like that. You want the bigger markets or whatever. And he said, well, if Green Bay and Pittsburgh were playing in the Super Bowl with those two fan bases, I would look at that as a good thing for the NFL. And a bunch of people were saying, why did he use two teams that have been so successful as the, you know, comparison here for what and those are two teams that are within smaller markets. Like, yes, they've been very successful franchises, but Green Bay, Wisconsin, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, it's not like those are the New York Cities, Chicago's of the world.
No. And that's why, like, the Jets are always on primetime, because a lot of people are going to watch the Jets no matter what, like, because they're the Jets, because they're in New York. And yeah, even if they're not good, sure, the Steelers will put on a better game. And Pittsburgh punches above its weight class. But I mean, yeah, there's definitely, being a small market is definitely difficult in the NFL. Now, it is easier than any other sport. The NFL has the most communal revenue of any sport. So it means the least in the NFL, but it definitely still means something.
There's quite a few questions that we still have to get to, but based off where we're at with time, I'm trying to think of one that could definitely fit in here. And I'm just curious as to what your answer is this, based off obviously the portion that we've been able to actually see take place here with it just being OTAs. But Carl Hassan Plug 4145, by the way, great name, Carl, said, how does the O-line chemistry look? And to me, with what the O-line actually does in this setting, it's very hard to say. So the question, obviously you can still answer Carl's, that I would have is just in terms of like talking to guys, how you feel like the camaraderie is with the group and how close-knit they are.
It feels awesome. Like, it feels like they have a really good understanding of, this is the group, these are our guys, we're in this together. There's a lot of pressure on us. The Steelers have invested a lot in us, but we're also really talented and we can do it. Like, I think if the offensive line doesn't work, it won't be because they don't have talent, and it won't be because they don't have the right attitude. Let's say that. Like there's like they have all of those things. Sometimes it just doesn't work. Sometimes it's other things. But like I feel pretty good about the Steelers, especially the internal guys like McCormick and Frazier.
Yeah.
I see that. Like I think it's very reasonable to expect those guys to be really good this year.
I mean, and the identity of what they want to do is certainly where the strength of the group is in terms of their ability to run block. I think there's still to be some questions there about the pass pro with Mason McCormick, and we'll see about Broderick and obviously things like that. But yeah, I think from an identity standpoint, they fit the bill with what they want to do there. I hesitate to ask this just because like it's been a conversation basically his entire tenure. But are you viewing this as a make or break year for Pat Meyer and the offensive line, depending on how this group goes?
Make or break year feels strong.
Okay.
I think you look at a lot of what happened last year and like, man, Zach Frazier played well as a rookie. Mason McCormick played well as a rookie. Ryan McCollum, a guy that like the entire football world had just kicked it to the side, comes in and starts games and plays fine. And there's a lot of reasons to feel good about a lot of the things Pat Meyer has done. I think if you give a guy 2 first-round picks, though, and you go 0 for 2 on getting those guys to reach their potential, as a coach, you should probably expect to lose your job.
Yeah, I think we'd be sitting here saying,
like that's the business. Like whether it was your fault or not, like you should probably expect to lose your job for that. Like that's just the way this works. Now, I don't expect that to happen. I think Troy Fautanu is man. I was really high on him last year, and he looks like he's moving just as well as he was before the injury. So like, I'm not particularly worried about that outcome. But like, if you're a position coach and you get 2 first-round picks, and you go 0 for 2, you're getting fired. Like that's just a business.
I think we'd be sitting here saying he did a nice job of turning, lower round talent and at least getting them to be like baseline starters, maybe getting the most out of them, helping them reach what effectively should have been their ceiling. But then if you look at that high end talent, man, why were they, basically at their floor with those guys?
Yeah, I think that's fair. And we'll see how it goes. I definitely think I feel better about the interior guys. I think they're in a really good spot.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're watching or listening to this podcast, you're in a really good spot too, because you get to watch.
I put out a potential nickname. I want to workshop this.
Okay.
So the Pirates had the Pittsburgh Lumber Company in the 1970s. And I put a video on Twitter of McCormick and Frazier on a tandem block. And if this group of young offensive linemen pan out, I think we should call them the Pittsburgh Moving Company. They're just out there moving people.
Yeah.
And I
like it.
I don't know.
There's a lot of them. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I almost feel like I should have hired one when I moved because I just did it all myself. Well, with my parents. And
back in the day, like in the 70s, you probably could have hired the Steelers offensive line to move you. Those guys all had to have second jobs. Like you could have called up, I don't know, Shane Corson or one of be like, hey buddy, I got a dresser to move. Put down the weights for a second and come help me out. And I got $100, and I'm sure that would have worked. Nowadays they're a little bit better paid. Probably don't need to be spending their summers in moving truck, but also the idea of like Zach Frazier wearing like a movers logo t-shirt. Like I can see this happening.
Yeah. Why do I feel like they still would? Like they wouldn't need to, but I feel like they would
anyway.
Yeah.
Like I wonder if Zach Frazier had a summer job in college, because like a moving company just feels right to me.
Yeah, I almost feel like we need to turn that into an episode, and we have like free time. Is what occupation would everybody on the team have if it wasn't being on the football team? But
that's a good thing to get back in the locker room, because I can wander around and just ask a bunch of people. So maybe we'll try that later.
Hey, there we go. Well, until tomorrow, Alan, tell the people they can find you.
Saunders_PGH on X, Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. PGH Steelers Now, the site's account. Huge sale ending soon, tonight at midnight, actually. So hurry up. Go get over to SteelersNow.com. $12 for a year's subscription to SN Plus. As far as I can tell, it's the best sale we've ever had. It's probably the best sale we're ever going to have. It is,
and a lot of people taking advantage of it.
$40 for a year. So that is a big, big sale. Go take advantage of it. And you will get, I will read my tweet because, well, I'm proud of it. You will get, here's what you get for your $12. My undying love and gratitude. Ad-free reading at SteelersNow.com. Subscribers only live streams. The self-righteous ego boost you get from supporting local journalism. Public shout-outs here on the podcast, and all the best content from me, DB, and the rest of the Steelers Now team. I think that's a pretty solid sales pitch. So I'm just sticking
6 things, 1 for each Super Bowl ring that the Steelers have.
And $2 a piece. So there you go. We do have some new,
a bunch new. Couldn't even fit all of them on there. We're gonna.
Oh my god, yeah, we have so many. They're gonna have to like cycle through them. But down below on the scroll there, Temple Radcliffe, Harry Shaughnessy, Jeremiah Lucy, and I'm not trying that one. Shushrat Gogti. I don't know. I'm not good at Indian names. I'm sorry. So and we're gonna have we have a dozen more of those in the can. So if you've already subscribed and you were like, "Where's my name?" It's coming. Don't worry. We'll get to you this week. But still time to get over there and subscribe. Please do. It really, honestly helps us out a ton. And of course, you can always subscribe to the YouTube channel here so you don't miss an episode of Steelers Morning Rush, Steelers Afternoon Drive, Sights and Sounds, practice reports, Beanie Bishop talking trash, all of the stuff we got going on here on the YouTube channel. And we have 15,833 subscribers. 33. That's an interesting one. I feel like this is prime, like really obscure guy territory here. I need to think about this one for a second.
I'm going to go with the brother of a former Steelers first round pick, Trey Edmonds, who in 2019 had an interception, unlike his brother, Terrell Edmonds.
On a punt. On a fake punt, right?
Yes, against the Colts.
Yeah, that's a good one. I'm partial to a couple of guys who wore this over the last 2 seasons, which was Aaron Shamklin last year, and the year before that, David Perales wore it. A couple of my guys, but I saw this guy today. The Steelers had a bunch of alumni at the practice today. They usually do that once during OTAs to bring everybody back. Russell Stuyvesant was at practice today, and we'll shout him out for the 33.
I just know it was so the Colts game. He had what was then the longest run of the season for the Steelers. He had the longest run of the 2019 season. The Rams game is when he had the interception. That was it. So I intertwined those 2 games. But anyways,
Russell Stuyvesant, I believe, Super Bowl champion in 2005. I want to say from McKeesport, went to Youngstown State. So
wow,
his son actually is now. I think he's actually going into college, but I don't remember where he went. But he was a recruit we covered last year at Pittsburgh Sports Now.
Well, this will be fun one in the comments. Let us know your favorite 33.
There are a lot of good options for 33. I mean, a lot. There have been a lot.
I have a feeling
not
current Steelers 33, Jack Sawyer could be a fan favorite as well, just based off the reaction.
How do you feel about an outside linebacker wearing 33?
I'm not a fan, but
I'm kind of okay with it, and I don't know why. I don't traditional jersey numbers, but I don't know. There's just Pitt got a defensive lineman who wears 81 this year, and I also kind of like that. I don't know why. Some of them just look right, even if they're wrong.
Yeah, I mean, maybe aesthetically Jack will pull it off because of the sleeves and stuff like that. Aesthetically, we'll see how he pulls it all together.
Double numbers are always cool, also.
It's fair. But yeah, let us know that your thoughts, anything that we talked about today, question for a future episode. Also, hit us up on all the listening platforms, Apple, Spotify, wherever your podcast from. If you're listening over there, leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. Just search Steelers Afternoon Drive. Do the same thing over on TikTok, and then you'll find me everywhere, Zachary Smith, PGH. For Alan Saunders and myself, thanks for jumping in and taking another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.